Boyfriend of 5 years cheated on me, so I ruined his precious RuneScape account. My boyfriend and I had met online well over 6 years ago through an online game by the name of RuneScape. He was 14 and I was 17, but it felt like we had been friends forever. We both played the game very often and connected through it, eventually leading us to start a long-distance relationship. Things began to escalate as the years went on, and we began seeing each other in person every few months or so. We were about 1,500 miles apart, so one of our main priorities for the future was moving in together and closing the distance. My job had prevented us from doing that, but we had finally set a date for me to move in with him in December of this year. Our relationship never had any serious issues, and I was more than happy to have him in my life, as he was happy to have me. As I got older, I began to play RuneScape less and less, as work took up most of my time. He continued to play regularly, if not more than he had when I first met him. He could never really hold down a job and barely had an income, but I supported him throughout the years and even paid his rent from across the country after he moved out of his parents' house a few years ago. I never really minded it because he was a sweetheart, but we began to have problems. In November of last year, I couldn't help pay his monthly rent. I was short on cash after having to pay my own living expenses alongside car repairs and bills I owed to the state, and I just couldn't afford to support him at the time. When I called him one night to discuss it, he freaked out and started crying that he didn't want to live with his parents again. I tried calming him down and even suggesting that I could help him find a temporary job until I could start providing for him again, but he wasn't having it. He claimed his parents would abuse him if he returned home, which I know for a fact isn't true because he and his parents have stayed with me several times. They've given him the world. I eventually did calm him down, but he remained passive-aggressive the entire night, and we eventually hung up. Because I cared about him, I reached out to his father the next day and informed him that he would probably be moving back home after his lease expired that month. I explained how I wouldn't be able to afford paying for his living for a month or two, and if there were any local jobs he could work in order to, make an income. Apparently, a friend of his father needed help managing a small warehouse for his business and was looking to potentially hire my boyfriend for the season. It paid $15 an hour and was super easy. I brought it up to my boyfriend that same night, and he was not having it. Not only did he not want to work in a shitty warehouse, but he didn't want to work at all. All he planned to do day in, day out was play RuneScape. I brought up a few other job listings I'd found in his area, and he immediately shot all of them down as well. He then had the audacity to comment about how he thinks I should work harder and possibly work a second job. I kept my composure and simply argued against it until we eventually hung up. I collapsed on my bed and cried for a good hour or two afterward because of the intense emotional stress I was under. Not only do I work 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, I'm also an industrial meteorologist. If I remember correctly, that's a lot more work than playing RuneScape every day and using my Hulu account. I really considered breaking up with him right that moment, but I changed my mind and decided to give him another chance. Looking back on it, big mistake. I messaged him throughout the night, and we sort of made up, but I was still a little uneasy about the entire event. He had moved back with his parents by the time December had come, and I began to help him look for jobs while he wasted his life away playing video games. I eventually persuaded him to start working at a small retail store near his house, and he thankfully began to make some money. I would still buy him video games and transfer him money like normal because I spoiled him, and our relationship began to feel somewhat okay again. Last month, both he and I put our money together to fly him across the U.S. to stay with me for 4 days. We hadn't seen each other in person since last summer, so we were both looking forward to it. He arrived, and we had a great time for the first few days because he could actually take me on dates for once with his new income. Everything was perfect until I caught a glimpse of his phone's lock screen while he was taking a shower. "When are you going to leave here?" the Discord message read. I could have run into the bathroom and snap his neck in that moment, but I kept myself together as best as I could without killing him. I had never felt so used, disrespected, or hated in my entire life. When he came out of the bathroom, I gave him a fake smile, but I genuinely hated him from that moment on. He could have dropped dead on the floor, and I would have spit on him. I spent the remainder of the night watching him play RuneScape, and I remained very quiet. He took notice of this and asked me if everything was okay, and I lied and told him I was fine. When it came time to go to sleep, I let him climb into bed with me, and he tried initiating sex because it was our final night together. I rejected as politely as I could without tearing him apart. He was disappointed, but went out like a light. Immediately after he went to sleep, I reached over and unplugged his phone and started digging through his messages with that girl. I feared that I had misinterpreted the message I had seen, but I was completely right after all. Not only had he been cheating on me, he had been doing so for nearly 6 months, leading me to believe that he hooked up with another girl directly after I couldn't pay for his living in November. I scrolled through probably 100,000 messages and wanted to vomit. When morning came, I had slept in because of how late I was up reading his messages. I woke up to find him on my computer playing RuneScape and eating my food. It was like all of our relationship had been wiped from my mind, and he was now an evil stranger sitting in my house. I wanted to scream at him, I wanted to tear him apart, and kick him out of my house onto the street, but I didn't. In fact, I gave him as much love and attention as I could muster that morning because I wanted to leave things feeling normal between us. I dropped him off at the airport, and we had a quick and somber goodbye before I left him forever, unbeknownst to him. I drove back home as calmly as I could before crying my eyes out in a mix of complete anger and emotional pain. I ended up kicking my bed frame so hard that the wood split, and I had to buy another one recently. If only it were his face. I want to break his heart by the time he arrived back home, but I wanted it to really hurt. I logged into our joint RuneScape account that we had made several years ago, where he and I would work on training the same account and raising it almost like our baby. We had always joked that if we were to ever split up, he would take half of the account's bank contents and I would take the rest. I took my half and transferred it to my main account before taking his half and giving it away to random people throughout the game. Every last bit of it. Even items I couldn't normally trade away, I used a spell to convert the items into coins, which I then gave away as well. The bank was now empty. It then occurred to me that I had the credentials to his main account written down in my desk, as he would frequently have me train his farming skill every so often. I didn't hesitate at all and logged into his precious 14-year-old RuneScape account. I immediately took all of the contents of his bank and sold it all on the Grand Exchange, a marketplace in the game. It took an extremely long time to clear out his bank, but he would still be flying home for about another 4 hours, so I had plenty of time. By the time I had sold and destroyed everything, I had 4 stacks of coins totaling over 8.5 billion. Now what to spend it on? I wanted to waste his life earnings on the most useless, stupid thing I could think of besides him. I logged back into my main account to reach out to a friend of mine that collects massive stacks of burnt food. For the unaware, burnt food in RuneScape has no use. You can't unburn them, eat them, or even sell them on the Grand Exchange. They are, however, tradable amongst players. I've always poked fun at this guy for collecting burnt food, but I was now more thankful than ever to make his acquaintance in my revenge. I asked him what the most obscure, unwanted item was of the burnt food variety, and he replied, burnt spider. Lo and behold, he had roughly 6,000 of the item spider on shaft, burnt, in his bank that he was willing to sell me. Feeling generous with my ex-boyfriend's coins, I gave my friend a full stack of 2.147 billion coins and left a very happy customer. I dropped the burnt spiders in his bank, but still had about 6 billion coins left to spend. With the remaining money, I decided to treat myself. I went on a Grand Exchange and ended up going on a shopping spree. The first thing I bought were 100 bonds. If you're not familiar, a bond in RuneScape grants you 14 days of in-game membership. After trading all 100 bonds to my account, I now have almost 4 years of membership paid for me. I spent a majority of his coins on extremely nice armor and weapons, all of which went straight into my account. He still had about an extra billion, so I spent it on the supplies I needed to level up an expensive skill of mine. By the end of the afternoon, he was left with a measly 150,000 coins in his bank, all of which I gave away to a guy cooking pizzas outside of the exchange. Nothing was left, so I decided to pick up a pile of bones off the ground and leave it solely in his bank. It might sound petty, but I laughed for a while. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is so cruel. You ruined the tens of thousands of hours he had put into a game. Well, it was time he learned that I could be a mean bitch. On top of spending every last coin he had ever made, I leveled his defense skill. This may not sound bad. In fact, it sounds like a good thing. I help his account progress, right? Well, no. Unfortunately for my ex, he had what players commonly refer to as a pure account, meaning he never, ever dared to level his defense skill from level 1. in order to keep the lowest defense stats but have high offensive stats. Well, not anymore. Have fun with your permanent level 6 defense. Cycling through hundreds of possible forms of revenge in my head, I settled on getting rid of his house. It's quite an achievement in RuneScape to have a nice house of your own. In fact, he had one of the nicest I had ever seen in the game. In order to have built it, he must have spent well over a few billion coins. Too bad I had disassembled it all in a matter of minutes, deleting it all into cyberspace. And there's no insurance either. He's going to have to rebuy everything with his non-existent money if he wants a new house. Bye-bye, casa de chite. Scrolling through his friends list, I decided to act as him and pay a visit to his friends who were currently online and admit that I had cheated on my girlfriend and was fully proud of it. If his friends hadn't removed him by that point, I removed them. All of them. Lastly, to add a beautiful little cherry to this revenge-filled cake, I changed his username. You're able to change your username once a month on RuneScape, so I changed this to let everybody know that he's a dirty cheater. I obviously won't drop his username here, but I did the best I could to embarrass him with a 12-character limit. He should be able to reclaim his previous username in about 3 weeks, but if he waits too long, I'll be able to swipe it and slap it on a throwaway account of my own forever. He sent me a very hateful and aggressive message later that night, followed by pictures of him crying. I wrote him a sincere message officially ending the relationship, while also scaring him away by threatening to take him to court, oversharing my nudes, and possibly filing a cease and desist if he would contact me anytime soon. I don't plan on doing any of that. I just don't want to speak to him ever again. Boyfriend of 5 years that I have financially supported for everything decided to cheat on me and spread my nudes. I wasted his RuneScape riches on 6,000 dead spiders and completely trashed his 14+ years of effort, leaving him with nothing to show for but a shameful username. Destroy my childhood, ruin my chance at college, and laugh when I said I was homeless? LOL cool, I'll ruin your fucking life. So, I posted almost a month ago about one experience with my mother and how I got petty revenge on her as a kid. I was initially going to post this story, but I didn't want to seem like a super terrible person. But after the response to the last post, I'll post the whole story, which is still somewhat ongoing. So I apologize, the backstory is pretty long, but it's necessary to understand why I did what I did. Thanks for your thoughts. For those that have been kindly pressuring me via private message, I made a GoFundMe warning it's NSFW. I don't expect much, but I'll be using anything I gain towards securing a place to live. As far as my art page, feel free to ask in the comments. TLDR, my mother abuses me badly for most of my life, as well as my younger siblings. I have to drop out of college and support myself after she drove me to homelessness. She proceeds to laugh at me about being homeless and denies abuse. So I ruined her life by getting my younger siblings removed and her arrested, making her lose her job, reported her to the IRS, and essentially set her up so that the remainder of her life is full of disaster and hardships. Backstory: my mother was a really bad person. I have 4 other siblings, 1 older sister and 3 younger ones, all with different dads. Before I was born, my oldest sister was taken away from my mother when she was a few months old because she tried to stab the father of my sister while he was holding her. She lost custody and the dude left her. My older sister went to live with her father's family in a different city. My dad went to jail 2 to 3 years after I was born for a while. I rarely saw him. He's an alcoholic, if that matters. She was a single mother, but she made it work and worked hard. One of the bigger problems was that she took out all her aggression and hatred of my father on me, as well as work stress, etc. She dealt with sexual abuse growing up, which I'm sure affected her relationships and how she treated me as well. Anyways, cue me being abused from the age of 4 to about 17. Every day was hell. She was extremely strict, and her perspective was warped. She was also pretty big in stature and had a lot of strength. Examples of her being terrible: I got beaten badly once because her room was dirty. The dishes weren't washed, and I got beaten as soon as I got home, even if there weren't dishes when I left for school. If I walk too loud, I get my ass beat. She broke my nose for looking at her the wrong way on my 10th birthday when she brought me a cake I was allergic to. It had peanuts. She knows I'm slightly allergic, but feigned ignorance. It was more or less every day or every other day. She used her fists, elbows, extension cords, hangers, chairs, canes, bats, etc. Whatever she could find, I was getting beaten with. I couldn't escape to my room for long because she would always call me every few minutes to get her things or to yell at me. She never drank or did drugs or anything. Whenever she was upset and I happened to be in front of her, she'd kick me down the stairs to make me hurry up. She's put a knife to my neck before and had to be forcibly stopped by her boyfriend at the time. Burned my Christmas presents from other people and just other really terrible things. The only thing I will say is she tried really hard to make up for it with video games and electronics, but it didn't make a difference to me. It never helped. She controlled most aspects of my life. I got by with little petty revenges like peeing in the Lipton iced tea she drank, rubbing her forks and spoons between my butt cheeks before I served her dinner, ignoring her screams for help when she had kidney stones. By the time I got to high school, I turned to alcohol. I resented her, and a negative atmosphere affected who I was as a person. I started to be cold and uncaring, calculated. She started kicking me out every few months, telling me to find somewhere else to live by age 15. She sent me away to a different country for a year and tried to keep my passport, but I made it back to the U.S. with the help of the embassy and my stepfather. I came back senior year with no credits for the prior grade, which ended with me getting a GED. I spent most of the time I could with my best friend and started working terrible jobs. I was terrible at saving as I had accumulated loads of bad habits while growing up, so it didn't make much difference. She eventually told me that if I went to college, I would always have a place to live until I finished. Cue my first 2 semesters at a 2-year college. I maintained a 3.7 GPA. My teachers loved me, and it was my escape. Towards the end of my second semester during finals, I came home late one night around 10 p.m., and my mother yanks the door open, screaming in my face, asking when I'll move out. I'm slightly drunk and decide to completely ignore her and walk to my room. If I open my mouth, that day would be the day I blew up and cursed her out. I've rarely ever raised my voice at her because it never ended well. Now at this point, I'm 19 and I've been doing school full-time with no savings. I'm also fairly fit and could easily take my mom at this point. I've never laid a hand on her or any woman. I hate violence. I get to my room and she rips my door open and starts yelling. I say nothing and stare at her. She walks away and calls the police on me, saying she thought I'd murder her and my younger siblings. I don't know where she got that idea from, as she's the one who's nearly killed me many times. I packed everything into a duffel bag and left 5 minutes afterward. I failed all of my finals because I couldn't make it to my school. Things kind of spiraled, and the next 2 to 3 years were me on and off homeless. I survived the best I could in a big city with no college degree and made a lot of bad choices due to my bad habits. Eventually, I found a profitable hobby that gave me meaning, and through that, I started to work my way up. I got my own apartment, had a full-time job, and did my hobby on the side. I hadn't kept up contact with my mother at all, but my younger sister, who was old enough to have a phone, found me on social media, so I saw photos and such. She didn't have it anywhere near as bad, but she did get beaten occasionally. My mother reached out via email, all smiles, asking how I'd been. Now, guys, I've always been envious of the relationship most people have with their moms, so I gave her a chance and gave her a call. We talked for a few minutes, and everything was civil and seemed like things would go okay. But then she asked me what I've been up to the last few years, and I told her honestly that I was homeless for a while and struggled a lot after what she did to me, but I worked my way out of it. She literally laughs. She laughed for a few seconds in a very condescending kind of chuckle, and then said, "I never did a thing to you, so you don't know what abuse is. It's your own damn fault you were homeless. So how about you?" But by that point, I hung up. I was speechless and fuming. I don't know what abuse is. Okay, I've spent too long letting you destroy my sanity. Now is the time. There were a few things my mother didn't know. 1, I knew for a fact that the current well-paying job she had was gotten on lies, as she never got her college degree and lied about it on her resume. 2, I had access to all of her email accounts and cloud storage accounts since I was the one that set them up when I was younger, and she never changed her passwords. Lastly, she definitely wasn't aware that from 13 years old and on to the last time she hit me, I took photos of all my bruises, marks, wounds, bloody noses, saving them to my computer and then Google Drive. On top of that, my little sister had been sending me photos via social media of the bruises she got from my mom. The first thing I did was compile all of those photos and videos into one folder. I then reached out to CPS in my city and explained that my siblings were being abused, how I was abused in the past, and that I had mountains of proof. Since I've called the cops on my mother before, and the thing that happened with my older sister, there was immediately a home visit. They arrived almost a day later with the police, and coincidentally, my mother was literally in the process of beating my younger sister when they were knocking. Cue an emergency removal of all my siblings from the house, and my mother getting arrested, though she was released hours later. I sent CPS all the evidence, and there's a legit case against my mother now. The next day, I emailed and then called up her job to inform them that she had lied about having a very necessary college degree as well as current events in her life, which sparked a background check. She was fired days later. Say adios to $75K and a blacklist in the only industry you know how to work. I then spitefully deleted every cloud account and email address I ever made for her, which was all of them, which I'm sure will make keeping up with a lot of bills nearly impossible. I then anonymously reported her to the IRS because of the tax fraud she committed for years by claiming people's children that weren't hers, with a lot of detailed information since I lived with her while she did it. So now, my mother lost all her kids and her job. I'm meeting with a caseworker from CPS next week to talk more about what happens moving forward, but I do know they're not going back. I don't know how she's going to pay her mortgage now and survive. I'm sure she's going to get a call from the IRS who'll be looking for a few $1,000s she owes them. She also has to go back to court in a few months. I'm not exactly sure what she was charged with, but I'll update when I find out how everything turns out. Side note, she isn't aware I'm the cause of any of this. I plan on keeping tabs on her and waiting until it seems like she's close to death before I tell her it was all me and I peed her Lipton. Coworker gets me fired. My many years waiting for revenge. This is my first post here, and I only have done this after telling the whole story to a friend who posts on Reddit and told me that this story had to be put here after telling him the whole story. This is a long post. You've been warned. If revenge is best served cold, then my revenge was many years in the freezer, and this week was finally pulled out and had whipped cream and a cherry put on top before finally served. So I worked for Company A for almost a decade that had a small team consisting of 10 people, doing commission work for businesses in my city. The owner treated us like family, knowing that we worked long and hard days, sometimes up to 60 hours in a week. He paid us better than expected, bonuses and perks he negotiated with businesses that commission our work. Even gave the whole company a week off paid when his son was getting married, so we could attend it. We had our squabbles like any other family, and things weren't always bright and perfect, but this is to show how nice the owner treated his employees and didn't screw me over. After working there for years, the manager position came open. Since by then, I was one of the most senior workers at Company A, I thought I would apply, which had a few others interested do as well. I didn't get the position, mainly because despite my experience at Company A, I didn't have a business administration degree. Someone who worked for the owner did, so he got it. Realizing the education I would have to get and the demand of this job, I thought long and hard and concluded that if I wanted to go anywhere in life, I would have to get that degree. Coming right out of high school to work for Company A was great, but if I wanted to do something more, I would have to go to university. I talked to the owner and gave my 2 weeks notice. When I explained what I wanted to do and why, he understood that I was trying to make something of myself. This all becomes relevant later, I promise. Going to university, I found that I had tuition covered through government grants, but not things like food, rent, etc. So I looked around and eventually found work at Company B. Company B was a retail store with a bigger staff than I had been used to, somewhere around 50 employees, but had such a huge employee turnaround that it was scary at times. They dealt with a wide range of goods from groceries to very expensive items. They had a certain niche clientele that they could order items for and catered to. I ended up working part-time in their warehouse and answered to the warehouse supervisor, who answered to the manager. There were other supervisors for other parts of the store, but for this, only the sales supervisor is relevant. Skip forward 7 years. In that time, I got my BA degree and worked at Company B the whole time, going from part-time to full-time, and eventually applied for the warehouse supervisor position. I was interviewed, got the job, been supervisor for months when the manager and I hired Kay as a warehouse clerk. Kay isn't the one to get the revenge, but she played a crucial part in the revenge. Then Bitch gets hired. Bitch started out as a cashier, working quickly up the chain and brown-nosing as many coworkers as possible, including the manager. When a sales rep went on maternity leave, Bitch quickly jumped at the chance to work in sales and ended up permanently being a part of that team, then the sales supervisor soon after. Me and Bitch got along like oil and water. We butted heads over things constantly. She would tell the manager all the small things that I did, but call me a snitch when I reported the issues she was causing. She would badmouth me and my warehouse staff, talk over me at meetings, and try to take credit for my ideas. She openly told coworkers that I was the cause of many issues and couldn't wait for me to leave. Oh, and she was never at fault. It would be the customer's fault, my fault, the delivery driver's fault, another coworker's fault, etc. There were times when we got together well, but far and few between. I get fired. So one day, a very, and I mean very, expensive ring set, over $5,000 I found out later, ordered by one of our customers, comes in. Years ago, I set up a procedure for any type of jewelry so that it will not get lost or stolen. The last step is once we have done everything with it in the warehouse, we take it to the office and have someone put it in the safe immediately. This particular time, I was the one who received the rings, so once going through the procedure, I told Kay that I was taking it to the office. The only one available who had the combination to the safe was Bitch. I asked her if she could open the safe. She looked at me, looked at the jewelry box in my hand, then said, "Put it down here on my desk. I'll put it away once I'm done with this email." Keep in mind that me and Bitch had a serious spat over something earlier that day, and I generally didn't feel like being close to her if I could help it. So I never saw her put it in the safe myself. The next day, I get a call from a manager to come to the office. I head there to find the manager, Bitch, and the HR consultant they pull in when some real stuff hits the fan. The manager tells me that said ring set has disappeared. I tell them the procedure I followed, and last I saw them was with Bitch. The manager tells me that Bitch checked the box, and that said box was empty. The manager then pulls the box out. Sure enough, the box the rings were in was indeed empty. I swear to the manager that the rings were inside when I checked them before giving to Bitch. At this point, it's my word against hers. By stroke of bad luck, the in-store video recorder had broken down days before the incident, so there was no way to verify what happened. We all know someone has to take the blame for this, and that's when Bitch strikes, saying that it was my fault since it was last seen in my hands. The manager asks if this is true, then I realize that, yes, I was indeed the last person to touch the thing, and I never actually saw Bitch pick up the box. Bitch gives me the look that screamed, "Gotcha." The manager and the HR consultant ask us both to leave. After it seemed like forever, I get called in. The manager tells me that since I was responsible for the rings at the time and now are lost, they would be firing me. But since they had no proof as to whether I stole the rings or not, they wouldn't press charges, which scared the crap out of me, as this was the first time I heard of them thinking this. I go back to the warehouse, tell Kay and the other warehouse clerks just what happened, grab my personal belongings, and left that day. After a couple weeks of trying to get my head around what happened and weighing my options, I decide my first priority is to try to get some sort of job and consider it lucky if I get a job flipping burgers with the bad rep when they ask Company B. I call the owner of Company A to get a good reference from them and explain what happened and why I was calling, only to get the shock of a lifetime. The manager position was about to be open. The guy who I lost the position to was retiring soon due to complicated health reasons. The owner had kept tabs on me while at university and understood when I didn't immediately come back to him. But with a golden opportunity like this, he wanted me back, and I wasn't going to say no. I dive into my new job I originally wanted with an owner I enjoyed working for. I thought then and there everything would be behind me, not knowing it would come back, not to bite me, but to pay dividends. This I found out after Bitch's reckoning. After I was fired, Kay knew she had to do something about Bitch. Kay knew that I wouldn't lose or steal something like the rings, but also knew that without proof, Bitch would deny that she did it and have Kay in her crosshairs to attack next. So, after talking with her husband, she hatched a plan. She started hanging out with Bitch, telling her things like, "I'm so glad he's gone," or "wish he had been fired much earlier." Bitch, feeling high from getting rid of one of her thorns in her side, soaked it all in, and after a couple weeks, invited Kay and Kay's husband, from now on KH, for drinks at her place with her and Bitch's husband BH. Months pass, Kay and KH do things regularly together with Bitch and BH, including drinking on weekends and couple-related events. When together, Kay would occasionally badmouth me, and bitch would agree. Finally, after over a year of playing nice, when Kay and KH were over at bitch's for one of their drinking parties, Kay randomly badmouthed me, mentioning the rings in passing. Then bitch says something that Kay was waiting for. I wanted those rings, so I stole them. Kay, hearing this, asked for more details. KH looks at her, tries to wave her off with one hand, then gives up when bitch keeps talking. That day, bitch had stopped writing her email and was going to put the rings in the safe. The safe was open, and she was about to put the rings away when bitch had an idea. See, as mentioned above, bitch wanted me gone from Company B. She also wanted those rings. She also knew that the cameras weren't working. She figured that she could pocket the rings, tell the manager they were missing, and spin it, so I would take the blame. Kay then asks where the rings are now, and bitch, being too drunk and not seeing a reason not to brag, not only tells her, but shows her where they are in her room. All while KH had been recording the whole conversation on his phone. The hand-waving was him saying he started recording. Kay gives a copy of the recording to the manager the next workday. Police are called immediately, bitch is arrested, and her house is raided. They find the rings. Kay and KH give the recording and testimonies to the police. Bitch's reckoning has begun. I get a call from the prosecutor's office after bitch is arrested and charged with theft over $5,000, among other things. He wants me to testify about what she did to me. I didn't skip a beat in saying yes. Fast track to the trial. The prosecutor has me, Kay, and KH testify and plays the recording of bitch admitting that she stole them. Her attorney tries to throw out the case saying that Kay got bitch deliberately drunk, but the judge didn't buy it, since there was proof she drank all the time. The judge was lenient and gave her 5 years in prison, which she yelled was unfair, but I personally thought she got off easy. Meanwhile, as the trial was happening, I was talking with a lawyer to sue bitch for setting me up like she did. We were also going to sue Company B for wrongful termination, but they settled the day they got notice of the lawsuit and knew they would lose. Bitch wasn't so lucky. They tried some trickery by having BH divorce her, and he received everything in the divorce, but my lawyer added him into the lawsuit as well. My lawyer asked overall for $3,500 for emotional distress, back pay from when I was fired until I started up with Company A again, and legal fees. And now, you are wondering where the metaphoric cherry is on this story? Well, recently we had someone leave Company A, so we were hiring someone to replace them. The owner was going over the resumes and set up interviews for the job this week. Lo and behold, bitch was one of the people to apply, but he didn't know that. I looked at the resume, was about to trash it, but then smiled. The owner set up the interview. She came in at her slotted time, looking to brown-nose her way through. Then she saw me. I smiled an evil smile. She went white. All I said was, "Ah, bitch, how are you? Remember me?" A deer in the headlights look from her. I look at her resume and say, "I'm sorry, I do not think you will be a good fit for our company. Thank you for applying." She said not one word and left. I helped someone get revenge on their gold-digging ass of it so. This happened some years ago, but was just reminded of it. So here you go, Reddit. I worked as a front desk agent in a large luxury hotel chain for some years. One particular hotel I worked at was located really close to the downtown area, and so we got a large number of young, very wealthy business people who loved to party. I usually worked the second and third shifts, which meant I got to see loads of drunken hookups, breakups, cheating, hookers, and more. This particular one, though, this is one I will never forget. I was working at the desk when a group of young, well-dressed men came walking in. They've all clearly been drinking, but aren't so drunk that they can't walk right and hold a conversation. One of them comes up to me and tells me that while he and his friends were at the bar, a woman was hitting on him, and even though he told her no multiple times, she wouldn't stop. So he and his friends left, and it wasn't until they got in the Uber that he realized he didn't have his room key anymore. He thinks she took it, and he's concerned that she may come up to his room. He asked that I deactivate his keys, and if she does come up to the hotel, to not let her in. When he was telling me all of this, it didn't sit right with me. He and his friends were all grinning about it and snickering amongst one another. Then he gave a clear description of her, without being asked. Told me height, body shape, hair color, and style, the kind of dress she was wearing, all while saying it in a mocking tone. Now, this could have easily been because he thought the whole thing was ridiculous or was too drunk to take it seriously, but it really didn't sound right to me. Either way, I did as I was trained in that situation. I pulled up his reservation, deactivated the keys as requested, made him a new set when he showed me his ID, and even offered to move him to a new room if that would make him feel more comfortable. He and his buddies all laughed a little at that, and he declined, took the keys, and they went to their room. About an hour or so later, the woman he described showed up. Now, by this point, my relief for the night had also shown up and was sitting at the front desk while I was in the back office counting down my cash drawer. I hadn't had a chance to tell him about the woman. Just as I'm walking out of the back office with my bag and about to leave, I see my coworker buzz the doors open and the woman comes rushing in, cuts through the lobby and down the hall to the elevators. She was barefoot, holding her heels in her hands, and knew exactly where she was going. I rushed up to him and told him what the man from before had told me about her. My coworker looked at me confused. He then pointed to the screen that had the reservation pulled up and told me that when the woman arrived, she went to use the room keys and they didn't work. So he asked for her room number and last name. She gave both, and her name is on the reservation. I looked at the reservation and down in the notes, there was a woman's name listed. The man from before was listed as the primary, but her name was listed as secondary with his consent to be in the room. I was confused. I thought maybe she wasn't the same woman he was talking about. But to be on the safe side, I called the man in his room and told him the situation and that we allowed a woman, fitting that description he gave, to enter the building because she confirmed her name was on the room. He laughed, said he forgot her name was on the room, and asked that I remove it. I was now super confused. I asked to make sure, "Sir, just to be clear, the woman you met at the bar tonight was with you at check-in hours ago and was allowed keys then, but now she is not?" Him laughs to all his friends in the room. Aw. Guys, I confused the poor girl. Gets back on the phone with me. "Yes, sweetheart, she's banned from the room. Don't worry about the other details. Just take her name off." Me, I see. Then, if she isn't going to be on the room anymore, would you like us to call the police and have her removed from the property? Him, oh, that's too far there. Don't worry, she'll get the hint soon enough. We ended the call there, and I got really suspicious of this. I told my coworker to not do anything and that I was going to stick around for a bit to see if anything happened. A short time later, the woman came off the elevator, pouring tears, sobbing while on the phone with someone. She sat down in our lobby, and my coworker and I tried to look busy while eavesdropping hard on her phone call. She was sobbing on the phone to her mom and sister. From what she told them, she was invited out to spend the week with her boyfriend meeting all of his old college buddies. This being their first night, they all met up for dinner and drinks. After a bit, she went to the restroom, and when she came back, she caught her boyfriend hitting on another woman. His friends all bet that he wouldn't do it. When she confronted him, pissed off, he called her a bunch of names and humiliated her in front of his friends and the entire bar. All of his friends joined in on mocking her, and he threw in her face that she was nothing without him and dumped her right there. He and his friends then took an Uber back and left her stranded at the bar with no money and no way back. She then had to use her phone's GPS and walk back to the hotel from the bar, barefoot. My heart broke. I felt horrible. I helped this guy treat this poor woman like crap, and now he and all his friends were up there laughing at her while she's sitting in our lobby sobbing and with nothing. I went over to our snacks area in the lobby, grabbed her a bottled water, and brought it to her. I told her that I couldn't help but overhear the conversation and was very sorry for her situation and asked if she would like us to help. I informed her that if he was keeping her from getting to her things, we could call the police and have them force him to hand over her things so she could leave if she'd like. Or if she wanted to let her mom or sister pay for a room, we'd be happy to give her a very low rate in a room far from him. She thanked me, took the water, and tried to calm down and talk to me about what all was happening and what her options were. Eventually, we decided on her staying in the hotel for the night and figuring out the rest in the morning. As we make it to the desk, she asked me to try and run her credit card to see if it has enough on it for another room. I asked her what she means by another room, and she tells me that she's actually paying for the room he's in. That his name is on the room because he booked it, but it's her card paying for everything. This intrigued me. I asked why she was paying for the room if it was in his name. She told me that she's the one with a job, not him. That he hasn't been able to find a job in his field since graduating from college and is essentially living off of his parents' money. But just after they started dating, his parents cut him off, so he's been living off of her money. That's why she was so upset and confused by how he had been acting all night. He was sweet and doing everything for her back home, but since he met up with his friends, he did a 180 and hasn't been the same guy the entire time. I wanted to tell her that it was obvious he was using her for the money and that he would probably blame his friends for all of this and try to get back with her later on. But I doubted she would have listened to me or cared for a complete stranger to butt in on her personal life like that. So instead, I offered up a sweet piece of revenge. I informed her that considering she's the one paying for the room, if she can confirm that it is her card on file with some sort of photo ID and verify the last 4 digits of the card number, then she could, if she wanted, to kick him out of the room and keep it all to herself. But considering how poorly her night has been, if she could indeed prove she is the one paying for the room, then I'd be more than happy to provide for her the biggest luxury upgrade we offered at our property. Largest suite we had, full hotel amenity access. I'd even have my coworker fish out a bottle of champagne and some fresh strawberries for her to have sent to her room, all free of charge. She was taken aback by the offer and was very sincerely tempted. She looked like she was about to say no. Then I told her that since she would be upgrading her room, that would require moving her things from that room into her new one, which meant the room that she is currently listed in would need to be vacated immediately. If anyone were to remain in the room after we have demanded it be vacated, we are required to have them escorted off the property or they pay for the room. Their choice. She then thought about it, pulled up her card's banking app, and showed me the screen. It had a photo of her, her full name, the card's full number, and the hole from our hotel for the room. She asked if that worked. It was good enough for me. I quickly upgraded her, moved everything over in the system, and before I could say a word to my coworker, he was already grabbing a set of master keys, a bell cart, and was asking her what her luggage looked like since he would be the one retrieving it for her to deliver to her room. He didn't want her to have to deal with her ex again. She smiled and told him which ones were hers and that she hadn't unpacked yet. My coworker runs down to the elevators and up to fetch her things, while I make her a new set of keys and send her off to her new room. Once she's on the elevator, my phone at the desk starts ringing. It's the ex-boyfriend, and he's very angry about why my coworker has entered the room and is taking her things. I calmly explained that I cannot give out the private information of any of our guests, and that if he would like to remain in his room, he will need to pay for it, as there is no longer a method of payment on his room. He blew up. He's making a ton of demands, and at the same time yelling at my coworker to stop what he's doing, but it's obvious from the way he's yelling at him that my coworker isn't listening to him. I can even hear the guy's friends telling him to chill out and just pay for the room. I then explain that we will give him a courtesy 10 minutes to make a decision, at which point, if he doesn't have payment ready, then he must vacate the building or we will be forced to call the authorities and have him evicted. He continues to yell at me. He screams, swears, threatens, and yells for a solid minute before taking a breath. I then tell him he has 9 minutes remaining and asks if he has come to a decision yet. He hangs up on me. 9 minutes later, I call the room and he doesn't answer. I call again, no answer. I call a third time, he picks up, then immediately hangs up. I call the police and tell them what's going on, and they said they're on their way. The officers arrive. I tell them what's going on. We go up to the room together, and the man and his friends are all white as ghosts when they see the cops. The cops explain to the ex-boyfriend and his friends that they're being evicted. The ex-boyfriend starts trying to talk to me, but the cops stop him and tell him to only talk to them. The friends are all offering to pay for the room at this point, and the cops look to me and ask if that would be acceptable. I smile very sweetly and say no, and the cops nod and start rushing all of the guys to grab their things and leave the room. The ex-boyfriend is the last one out the door carrying his 2 bags and complaining that he isn't even given a luggage cart and has to carry his own things. His friends all look pissed at him. I go with the officers to escort all of them out of the building and run into my coworker in the lobby. He waits until they're all outside in the parking lot to tell me that the woman is in her new room, loves it, and said no to the champagne. She just wanted to sleep. I didn't get to see her before she left town the next day, but the ex-boyfriend did try calling our hotel to complain a number of times and even tried leaving some bad reviews of us online and lied through all of it. I hope she doesn't have to ever deal with him again.